Thank you so much, everyone, for waiting. We had the tech setup that took a little more time today than earlier. Welcome. Without any further kind of delay, I would like to introduce to you the second session of this series, which is Architectural Practice in India, Millennial Archaeology. I am Anuj Daga. I am an assistant professor at the School of Environment and Architecture, and we host the City Conversation series as a way to engage with the larger cultural discursive sphere of the city and also beyond. Just to kind of dive into today's presentation and summarize what we have discussed so far in our first panel discussion that happened last week between architects Brinda Somaya, Ratan Bartley Boy, Ravi Sarangan and Ravindra Punde. We learned about the slow corporatization of architectural practice, where the earlier model of atelier model of architectural studio dismantles into a more hierarchical and categorized structure of specializations and production driven team formations. And the panelists also expressed their, if I may say, reluctant willingness to accept the varying scales of work which came their way, that helped them to diversify and create smaller units within their offices to address the design concerns of the emerging market as it evolved. They also drew us into the markers of economic boom that happened post the 90s, and also the recession of 2008, which fundamentally kind of redirected decisions for several large firms. Today we shall discuss we shall kind of focus on relatively smaller and softer ways in which architectural practices engaged with ideas of design, primarily where the urban periphery became their experimental field. So let me introduce to you what we are going to, the premise of today's discussion. It's titled Urban Periphery as the Experimental Field. So there are two components, the urban periphery and the experimental field. So the emergence of urban periphery is basically, to give a background, while the decades of 70s to the 90s saw migration of people, within cities, post the millennium, urban dwellers began to look for opportunity to find recluse from this, from the growing intensities and urban life, of urban life. And the people are exhausted and they are looking for release within the outskirts of this primary city. And during this time, land in the outskirts of cities comes to be consolidated mostly by contractors or small-time building facilitators in these fringes as optimized parcels of real estate to be sold in open market. These lands were mostly agricultural lands. Earlier, they were held by these large joint families and multiple people, and which were slowly kind of owned by nucleating members of the family. There's also a hypothesis alongside that strengthening markets boost the spending potential of the upwardly mobile middle class in the city, leading them to make asset-driven investments such as property in these outskirts. So what are these outskirts? So and this is the experimental field. Places like Pune, Alibag, Dharampur emerge in a kind of in this kind of environment. And here, the architect enters as a design consultant for primarily functions like second homes, weekend villas, and farmhouses, which are delivered in the register of recluse and recreation. And moreover, in the still settling land codes and building laws of the newly converted agricultural lands in this relaxed urban context, architects are able to experiment from outside of the urban bylaws. So this panel discussion aims to open up what is happening in this kind of scenario and how do architects respond to this kind of urbanization process, which is resulting in a new kind of urban periphery around primary cities. We will look at the works, in their portfolios to illustrate and understand that what are the kinds of aspirations that get worked out in these landscapes. So I'll now introduce the discussants together, and just to lay out the format of this evening, we'll first do a kind of round of short presentations by all our speakers. And then we will, we'll go to the panel discussion and where we'll open up questions from the material that we have seen. Let me go through a round of introduction of all our speakers. Our first discussant is Puran Kumar from Studio PKA. Puran Kumar graduated in 1987 from IIT Roorkee, and he is the principal architect at Studio PKA. It was established in 1993 as Puran Kumar Architects and Designs, that later became PKA. The design studio offers design solutions for corporate and residential spaces with a global and Indian sensibility. His firm has also undertaken projects of adaptive reuse and urban regeneration. The Mango House in Alibag, which we had the opportunity to visit some years ago with our students, remains one of his very remarkable projects, and it was also one of the only Indian entries shortlisted in the Best Residences category for the 2015 Inside Awards. We'll learn more of his projects as he presents, as he shows his work today to us. Our second presenter will be Rohit Mankar from Architecture Brio. Rohit Mankar is an associate partner at Architecture Brio and the head of projects with a focus on technical development and implementation of their projects. Rohit studied architecture from the School of Architecture at CEPT in Ahmedabad. He also holds a master's degree in advanced architectural design from University of Pennsylvania. Rohit has over 2 decades of experience, and he began his career working across hospitality and residential design with WATG, which is Wimberley, Allison, Tong and Gu in London in the US. In London in the UK. He was drawn by the opportunity to contribute to the emerging language of modern Indian architecture, drawing deeply from its traditional roots while also evolving to a vernacular modern future in 2000. And in 2005, he therefore founded the Parallax Design Studio, which was a multidisciplinary firm based in Mumbai. Over 15 years, his portfolio has expanded and included a variety of projects ranging from hospitality to offices to residences and product design. As a specialist in hospitality space, he has worked with leading hospitality brands like Four Seasons, ITC and Radisson, as well as collaborated with international design icons such as Philip Stark. Rohit has been a visiting faculty member at Kamaraja Vidyanidhi Institute of Architecture since 2018, and he has also been a regular part of various academic forums across colleges over the years. Our next presenter will be Vandana Ranjit Singh from Ranjit and Associates. Vandana Ranjit Singh is an architect and educator who is a founder principal of Ranjit and Associates. She is also a graduate of the Center for Environmental Planning and Technology in Ahmedabad. She began her career with prestigious firms like Atelier Dodge, Chenebly, I hope I am pronouncing it correctly, and Associates in Switzerland, with Kamu Iyer at Architects Combined Mumbai, and the Twin Leg Professional Consultants. And please correct me if I'm mispronouncing names. So at Ranjit and Associates, which was established in Mumbai in 1982, her work focuses on a commitment to design and environmental sustainability. She has 3 decades of experience, and the firm has been widely recognized and won competitions and awards, including the AESA Gold Award in 2008 for the best project in group housing for the Woods. The name of the project is the Woods, which is in Wakad. As an educator, she has taught architectural design and theory at the Kamaraja Institute of Architecture in Mumbai, and she has been teaching since 1993, where she has previously held the position of chairperson of academic forum. She has conducted workshops and has been a juror across various universities. And in 2011, she was also awarded the best architectural design teacher by the Maharashtra Association of Schools of Architecture. We had a 4th speaker today, Samira Rathod, but due to the rains, one of her site visits got postponed, and she couldn't make it today. But we'll try to kind of get her for another panel discussion in this series, and hopefully our audiences will be able to kind of engage with her work too. With that, I think all the three forms, all the three practices today that we have been very interestingly engaged with building in the kind of condition of the urban periphery, and I'm really looking forward to learning from all their work and then kind of discussing and understanding this transition in our urban space. So may I please invite Puran Kumar to come and give his presentation. Yeah.
Hi everyone. Good evening. Thank you. Thank you, Anuj. Uh, Thank you, all of you at sea. And I'm hoping we are able to add some value to this evening. I don't know. Okay. Just very quickly, I think Anuj has put the evening into a context. We have some of our work that we would like to share with you, but I think that's not the only objective. The objective is a conversation, dialogue. So hopefully, what you're seeing here is a bit of a trigger for the conversations to ensue. We are Studio PK. I'm going to very quickly go through what we do. Okay, we are here for this. And I don't think I can put more words to explain what Anuj just tried to say. There has been a movement many decades ago out of the city. The clutter and the chaos of the city has driven a lot of people out. And I think we've seen a lot of architecture as a result of that. And that's what we're going to be analyzing or talking about today. We are a studio based out of South Mumbai. We are, as he said, a 30-year-old or 30-year-old plus kind of studio in the city. We work pan-India, but we live in a building like this, which is located in the art district of South Bombay. This is what we look like. This itself is a project of adaptive reuse nature. It's called the Loft Redefined. We've had in this building two interventions, one on the top floor of the building, which is a 110, 112-year-old building now. And this intervention happened post-COVID when we had to move from that big space to a smaller, relatively smaller space. This itself is about 2,500 square feet. But this was adaptive reuse on two levels. One is to populate the building and give it the kind of life that we wanted to provide the architecture. And two is that we reused each and every piece of metal, glass, and wood, leave alone the furniture, from what we had as a facility on the top floor to come down to this level. That's what the space looks like where we are. I'm not going to take too much time talking about this because that's not the subject. But this is just to set a context as to where we come from as a group of individuals, thinkers, imaginative creatives who try and give us as much energy and input as possible. People come in, enjoy the studio for not just events, but for talks, conversations, dialogues like these. And we always invite people to come in and not just be part of who we are, but learn from what they are doing in the field of architecture. Some of the works just put together over here. I think my studio is trying to boast over here. Don't want to go beyond that. The subject today is the city and going away from it. I think that little collage on the right hand side shows you. Is there a pointer in this? Is it this? Great. That the city has gone from this, as we've seen in the last century, to this, which we see in this century, while this stays the way it is. I don't think anything is happening to this in a long time. Slums remain. The city has gone vertical. Dilapidated city keeps getting reinvented in a sense. I don't know how else to put it as the invention, but yeah, that's what is happening. While some of the other things remain, whether it's of course, this is going now, the Kali Pili is going to go. People remain, but I don't know for how long. We're trying to understand here what's the whole idea about movement away from the city, or the aspect of escaping from the city and occupying spaces which are supposedly calmer, or they are a little more sane energy. So the escape from the paucity of space and chaos of the city is what we're trying to understand here. An alternative way is to connect with nature. I think that's the pursuit, isn't it? So looking at that from this city, you're looking for this sort of relief, maybe. I think all of us are somewhere or the other connected with that. As Anuj mentioned, from Mumbai, you can go to some of these places which we've tried to highlight here. There's Karjat, there's Lonavala, Pavna, Pune, a little ahead, Mulshi, Ambi, and Alibag. Some of the projects that we've done, you will find have their footprint in some of these spaces. I'm going to quickly dive into some case studies that we've got over here. First of which is in Ambi Valley. Strangely, it's a good mix of the city and nature. So it's a gated community. It's a huge gated community. I don't know how many of you people know about this place. It's hundreds of acres of place of space with some water, man-made lakes that are there, and there are a whole lot of these houses which have been built over the last 20 years in and around that. Somewhere in the beginning of the century or the first decade, we were contacted by one of the clients who had been given a raw deal by Ambi because they promised to build a Spanish villa, but they did not end up delivering what they were promising. However, they were married to them for the structure. So our first intervention in Ambi Valley happened to be in a structure that was half built on a certain style of a Spanish villa in Ambi Valley in Maharashtra, 100 kilometers from Bombay. And it was given to us and said, okay, Puran, can you please revive this and make some sense out of this as our second home? So we, of course, just to give you some initial pics of what Ambi looks like. So it's got clubhouses and it's got sports activities and a whole lot of rich people's things. This is the kind of structure that we had acquired, so to speak. The 10,000 square feet structure, 4 bedrooms on a couple of levels. And just to give you a little context, that's the site, which is yellow marked over here. There's a fort here at the back, that's the context, and a lot of green. You can see these little hillocks, the little range that you have across the lake. And they already had the structure. What did we have to do there, of course? We had to create life for them there. We had a family of 2 families put together, and we had to create life for them in and around that place. Our intervention was literally dressing up the structure on the inside and outside and giving it as comfortable look as possible. I will come back to why we are talking about this project when we finish with our presentation or maybe during the discussion, but this is just to give you a glimpse of some of the interiors of day spaces and the night spaces. We tried to do, I think there's something is up with this. Can you guys hear me? It's eaten up. Hello. So we tried to give some sense of a Spanish villa vibe in Maharashtra to our clients. We're architects, we also paid, we are not just idealists. I wanted to bring this project for you guys to understand that sometimes, however much you feel that you have sensibilities of your own kind, you're engaged in an exchange here. You're engaged in a thought exchange. Their view, the Ambi developers, was to have a Spanish villa sitting in that valley, and we had to respond to them. Of course, I am not saying that we did not get satisfied by what we're trying to put together as the interiors, and of course the inside-outside connect and the feel of the Moroccan Mediterranean kind of feel of the building structure with the stucco work. We tried to do whatever best we could do with the given structure. Architecture was not ours. I own the project, but for giving it a lease of life. But that's a case study in my portfolio, and I wanted to bring to you guys over here for you to understand that a practice is not only about how it conceptualizes or the inception of things happen in your head. It's also about how you try and adapt to what is to be done. Alibag. We had a lot of discussion on Alibag in the room before we came here. Alibag has got its beaches, it's got the greens and the wadis, and it's got hills and a lot of character, a lot of nature to draw from. Don't know how long will that remain though. place is getting defaced and concretized faster than you can imagine. But there are houses, there are villas in and around here. Just some slides from internet to show you. The Mango House, I think Anuj talked about it. Some of you have even visited this place. We built this house about 10 years ago. We acquired the property about 12, 13 years back. The idea was to stay as vernacular as possible. There were 12 mango trees on the site. We wanted to stay with the context, be true to where we were. It's the first time that I think there was nobody dictating what you could do. When the jury, international jury, asked me multiple times, so whose house is it? Whose house? Who's the client? I said, the client's the mother of my kids, or the architect's kids, and they will burst out laughing. So we built this for ourselves. And it's very tough to build for yourself because you don't have anybody dictating things. At the same time, on one level, the sense of liberty is something else altogether. We built, of course, the context is about 10, 15 minutes from Mandwa Jetty. It's in this place called Awas. That's how the place looked like as we started mapping it out. That's a little site plan. You can study about it, read about it. Other places, simple floor plan. We had a narrow site, so we went 1+1. But the whole idea was to try and stay as connected with the outdoors as possible, stay as textualized in the entire scheme of things as possible. Some of the sections that give you an idea of how the space flows from east to west. This section is actually going from east to west. That's the east side and that's the west. And a simple Mangalore tile roof put on a brick and concrete structure with as much openness on all four sides. The green being invited and framed into the house and staying true to the materials. The materials was some of the was the brief to oneself, and you just organically started building from there. The structure emerged very organically. It was not meant to be something that was a pre-decided, pre-modeled kind of structure, but yes, there was a thought. There was a sentiment that you wanted to build very, very close to what you see the vernacular setup being. So the Mangalore tiled roof with a wooden frame, the openness that every side would have windows and fenestrations, double-heighted spaces, giving the flow to the very feel, the emotion, as you go from one space to the other. As you can see in this one, for example, that's the entrance, and you come in, and through this entire north-south connect, you have places on the west and the east, which are the living and the dining spaces, and they have no business having a slab. So I didn't build a slab. I wanted to do something that was unnecessary. This is actually a result of cutting out the unnecessary, is just that. The plaster was not necessary, was not there. You just sealed it. The slabs were not there where you didn't need to walk or utilize the space more than necessary. It was not there. This is the dining space, which has a nice connect with the kitchen and the pool side, open side, open door dining. A little study unit, a little space at the top, which is carved out of the bedroom space. So the spaces kind of flow vertically in a transition as well as horizontally, and we just have something very, very simple, flowing vernacular kind of space. It is not vernacular in scale, and I'll take that absolutely clearly. This is an architect's expression into trying to put scale in his architecture, but in spirit and in emotion, it's just as much a village as you'll find that. I'm sure that some of the people along with Anuj have experienced that, and you're most welcome whenever we have open days for you guys to come and have a look at the place. We moved a few years later to this place called Pavna. This time it's a lake which is much more magnificent, it's much more scenic. It's got these forts like Tungi and Tikona Fort, which are in the vicinity. That's our context. And we responded to the context with this client who wanted to write there. He's a film producer, he's a writer, he wanted to write and have a space which was away from Pali Hill, which is where they stay in Bombay. And it has this kind, as I said, it's got this sort of a context where we are building here, and we've got these forts in the distance. Lohargarh Fort, Tungi Fort, and Pavna Lake with this dam is right here. It's a 9-acre plot, which he has kept for future expansion, but we built on a place which looked like this as a context. The expression again is fairly basic, scale apart. I think the scale is what is not in line with what we are trying to do here. I think we'll talk about this, we'll discuss about this. When it is an opportunity, what do? We go beyond ourselves and we build, because we don't have that kind of space in Bombay, in the cities. And hence people try and see that their dreams are coming true, every space that they want to have in these dream places. We exploded the plan over here and had it in a few blocks. As you can see, the guest block here and the main living block here and the bedroom blocks there. We wanted to give privacy to the various generations that are coming in here. By the time we finished the project, the generation had grown and we wanted to give them a separate area to themselves. So without going into the planning too much, that's the kind of response, the kind of feel that we had to the project, with the sort of volume, the openness. Once again, responding to the context by way of as much openness, as much inside-outside connect, as you can see in this picture. So I'm standing in the living area, looking at the dining, looking through the verandas onto the lake, and you have no business being in. You're out most of the time because that's what you're there for. You don't get to do that in Bombay. There you are. So pool becoming the central experience in the house, and that's the kind of feel. We just like to build minimally, like to give the space its credence, at the same time make sure that the openness and the connect with the outside and the green is not lost. So that's the little angan that you have as a private area, semi-private, between the three blocks, where people can come out of their spaces and still be together. Back to Ambi Valley. Now it's post-pandemic, and we built another place called 6 a.m. House, which is on the same site. The families grew and went on to acquire the next door plot. And they said, we've grown out of Mountaineer now, and why not build another house? And we have another 12,000 square feet space that's been built recently. In fact, it's not been documented yet, but we'll show you some pictures. This is a courtyard plan, and we pitched that this time. This is the time that we were building it ourselves, and they had not given us that opportunity 15 years ago. And we said, we would like to have a place where these families have now the third generation coming in, and the kids would like to have a little courtyard. We would also like to make sure that you have a much more cohesive, a little more inward-looking house, while not compromising on the openness of the entire place. You see this entire east-west connect that you see over here, through the open lawns which look onto the lake, going through the living, going through the courtyard, through this alley, onto the back, and there's a fort at the back. So the whole thing has been planned around that axis. These are some of the images as we were getting out of the piece. Again, very basic. We built some of the formwork finds expression in this project, because I did not want to go and give them a lot of coated, plastered spaces, surfaces in terms of things. Also, the central courtyard as well as the staircase area has got a lot of openness. We have this retractable roof at the top, which 9 months of the year you will have it open to sky courtyard, but it also shuts during the monsoon, as is it now. The bedrooms at the back do have a pitch roof. They have the sense of volume. They have 4 bedrooms stacked in different directions. And the day areas are out there in the front, as you can see, looking towards the east. Some of the expressions in terms of landscape in and around the place, very, very important again. I think a lot of people tend to move to these places outside the city because the landscape, not just the nature that is naturally available, but the landscape that we do around that gives them a lot of solace, a lot of relief. Is an activity that is extremely common. Just to wrap up, I'm showing you these works which are across 15, 16 years of what we've done in and around the city. There's some more, but that's not worthy of showing over here. But this just gives you the variety of what the context may have been, or the ask may have been of the project. It's different in all of these. Somehow, as architects, our response has been to the brief, whether it's a self-brief, whether it's a forced brief, or whether it's a mutual brief. For us, what's important here is that the dialogue between the clients, the users, and us is fruitful, and it is satisfactory at the end of the day. But we've tried to stay with the context. We tried to make sure that the response to the context and the materiality, which is one of the things that the studio is known for, is respected. Thank you. More when we're talking together.
Thank you, Puran, so much for showing very pertinent examples for this panel discussion. I will invite Rohit to make his presentation. Yes, you can use it from there. Uh,
Thank, Hello. Thank you, Anuj. Thank you for the invite. And Puran, that was very insightful. And looking forward to the discussion later. Um, so, um, yeah, like Puran discussed, today's topic is building beyond the city and architecture and the peripheries. What you're talking about right now is that from the late 1990s, India saw a distinct pattern. The cities pushed outwards, peri-urban and rural land near big cities was revalued, and a new market for second homes and farmhouses emerged. And these were bought both as leisure retreats by affluent urbanites as well as speculative real estate investments. Um, this is a map which shows locations along with timelines for some of our projects around Mumbai. So starting from 2013, quickly rush through that. Bulk of the work is, as you see, in Alibag, few in Karjat, Kamshet, and a few a bit south in Tala, but that was going outside the map, so I don't want to include that. When you talk about the place in the wild, peripheral areas like Alibag, Karjat, Lonavala, Kamshet, etc., became prime sites. And because of the relaxed building laws and looser planning controls, they allowed experimentation in form and material. And for us architects, these conditions opened up a testing ground, right? Where place where regulations weren't fixed, clients were aspirational, and nature itself became a collaborator or sometimes an adversary. So we'll talk about that as we go ahead. But how do we build in these pristine natural landscapes? There is a dilemma that every architect faces when starting work on a new site. And at Architecture Brio, many of our most experimental houses come from these contexts. So what I'll do is I'll quickly walk you through a few of the projects, not in too much detail, but the projects which reveal opportunities, contradictions, and learning. And Anuj, please stop me if I'm going beyond your 10 minutes. So Repair and House, one of the early projects becoming the landscape. This project shows us how peripheral context allowed experiments in embedding the architecture within the topography itself. So by that I mean the sloping terrain allowed us to design a house which they actually built into the hill. The roof becomes an extension of the hillside. It becomes a living surface that blurs architecture and landscape. And this house has many typologies. It is an underground house, it is a courtyard house, it is a veranda house, and it is a lookout post. And this house is a combination of all these elements. Interestingly, it came together. And this project also shows us how the absence of rigid bylaws gives us freedom to integrate building and ecology. So that was one of the main learnings from this project. And at the same time also highlights the fragility of working in flood-prone zones, the need to design with water and not against it. So this was a learning from the riparian. I'll move on to the next one. It's called Designing with Water, House on a Stream, also in Alibag. This one is Alibag, the previous one was in Karjat. This home is one which cannot exist in the city because the peripheral context forced architecture to negotiate with landscape. By that, I mean a perennial stream ran through the client's site, and many would have seen this as an obstacle. But we decided to celebrate it and make it a central idea, and the house straddles the stream and makes the water a daily presence. The bridge and the pergola that connects the two buildings stimulates and even forces at times the users to move out of the comfort zone and experience the outside several times during the day. The pool here acts almost like an extension to the stream. The materiality is contrasting. You have heaviness of the exterior concrete mass, which is reversed by the lightness of the white washed walls and ceiling. Here the architecture is delicately balanced on a very reduced footprint, which was very conscious about of the fact. And we also wanted, by lifting the tips of the wings of the ground, the relationship with the landscape is paradoxically strengthened. So that's something which we realized, that the building need not always sit on the ground. This way also it kind of talks to the landscape. From escape to engagement, artist retreat Alibag. Not all second homes are about luxury or leisure. The artist retreat was conceived as a working space, a place for reflection and creation. This signals an evolution. The peripheries as more than lifestyle, they can also be spaces of production and meaning. In this project, there was one major concern. The coastal nature of the site meant that due to impending sea level rise, we had to consider building on a land that may not exist in the near future. So what did we do? So basically, use of building methods that have less impact on fragile ecosystems is what we had to kind of come up with. And also, as buildings which are future ready and could accommodate rising sea levels was also one of the concerns. So the architecture of this is basically stilts, columns, and beams which are made of galvanized steel. And as you can see, the columns are kind of delicately balanced on boulders which are then embedded on the ground. The roof structure is built of bamboo, again locally sourced bamboo. V-shaped rafters. The reason the V shape came along is because locally sourced bamboos, unlike Indonesian bamboo, is not straight, and it's not really pretty to look at. So this kind of distracted from the waviness of the bamboo, and also gave structural strength to the roof. Like I was saying, the detail of the column sitting on the boulder, but the structure is also all on nuts and bolts, and it can easily be assembled and disassembled relatively easy if it has to move along, if the house, let's say the site gets flooded. The roof structure with the solar panels integrated into it. And here you can see how the light filters through the screens and animates all the spaces within. Negotiating altitude and ecology, a Himalayan mountain home in Sitla, Uttarakhand. I'm kind of departing from the local context to the context in North India, simply because, I mean, that's what Alibag or Pauna is to Mumbai, Sitla in a sense, Mukteshwar is to Delhiite, so a lot of homes, second homes get built there. We luckily got a chance to build in Sitla. This is how the site looked. The view was spectacular. Every site has a story. And you find these metamorphic rock formations everywhere near the site. And it felt very natural to have these become the basic component of our project. The inspiration for this was the typology, which was a building tradition in this region, like a load-bearing stone masonry walls, standing seam iron roofing, which was later introduced by the British. This is actually our local cow shed, which was very, very beautiful. Here you can see the workers actually sculpting and we actually found this rock when we excavated. So it cannot get more local, because the stone from which the house is built is actually the stone on which the site was. The stone elements of the retreat seem to almost merge into the existing terrain. Yeah, I mean, the idea is that the windows disappear into pockets, giving 100% opening. And as you can see, there's no visible railings to block your view. But what we did is, I mean, a safety mechanism was a net, which was actually horizontally there. So if you actually went over the edge, you will be bouncing on a trampoline kind of a net. So that was the substitute for a railing. The south facade was actually raised to actually get the light into the facade. The roof actually converse to what we do in Maharashtra because of the harsh winters. It actually let the light in, and the slope of the roof was kind of dictated based on that. From one pavilion to another, you could walk through gardens. It was beautifully landscaped. The roof profile emphasizes the panoramic views of the Himalayas here. One of the other pavilions, which is sitting in an orchard, which reflects the orchard in its glass facade. The timber structure is made of local Himalayan pine by a local carpenter, but however the roofing was copper sheets, and actually it came from Sweden, and the installation was supervised by a French roof specialist. Fireplace also built in stone. The master bedroom, where again the glass, the windows disappear into the stone walls, transforming this space into a veranda. So idea could be a duality of. This view emphasizes the continuous framed views as one moves through the house. So series of vistas as you kind of progressively move. So for the inhabitants of Uttarakhand, owning a concrete frame house has become the symbol of aspiration, aspirational. This retreat is the total reverse of that. Moving on to aspiration was the responsibility, the Ray Alibag. I think this house is probably in Lohono State, so many of you are probably familiar with it, but I'll just quickly go through the idea behind it. Rather than shying away from its presence, the house shows confidence. We didn't want this house to disappear like the Karjat one. And we imagined the house as if we found an old ruin. A few solid stone walls left abandoned, topped with a light pavilion. And that kind of ethos continues in the lower part of the house, where you actually see the basalt rock formations, which are there, long lost memory to around millions of years ago. And we wanted to avoid the concept of this mega panorama, which most people aspire to do. So we did that in the Himalayan house as well. But instead of a panorama like the Himalayan one, we designed two telescopic pavilions, which actually intentionally pointed their most narrow sides to the view. And what that does is it allows to create a myriad of micro panoramas. So one for each season of the year and each other of the day. And you can see the passing, the kind of light movement, the shadows which actually hit the facade due to this. So this is actually an instrument from which to experience the landscape in different ways. As you move towards the entry, and instead of revealing the panoramic view directly, you kind of go, the house delays the view. You enter into this kind of a large volume. You walk down and it teases you till the end, where you come to the pool veranda, and finally it kind of reveals the entire panorama. That kind of a progression was something which we... this is openness of aspiration. A recently completed Dua Villa in Alibag reflects a different aspiration. It's a cosmopolitan desire for openness, water bodies, and iconic design. This house embodies the tension between ecological responsibility and the demand for exclusivity. So we started with a simple nine grid and then broke it into several more grids. These grids were then kind of shifted to create main versus peripheral spaces, and then that allowed for creating courtyards and axes. Then we also did a scallop. The facade was scalloped to actually create softness, because otherwise the entire mass was getting very strong. Certain photographs of the entrance. This is, it's almost like the entire design has become, it's almost Mediterranean and monastic. It's in its quality. We have a rough sand plaster on the exterior and a kada plaster on the interiors. This is some of the views of the car porch. Some views of one of the courtyards, which you call the secret courtyard, which has a nice water body, landscaped by Kunal Ranjit and Associates. We collaborated with him and it turned out to be a fantastic job. The core of the house, which is the heart of the house, is the main courtyard and the peristyle, which actually, you see the axis leads right up into the pool, which I'll be talking about later. This is the peristyle, which has this very monastic cave-like experience. The kada plaster, which is a lime plaster, which lets the wall breathe, is applied in the inside, and we have simple materials like kota stone and cement terrazzo floors, nothing fancy. But the kind of the modulation of the section and spaces which bring in light create the experience. Scallops, like I said, add softness to the form. The pool is imagined into three distinct zones: the outdoor pool, a semi-indoor, and an indoor pool. And the idea that landscape elements not only surround the house but also enter and interact with it is the idea behind this. There's also a movie which I don't know. Do we have time, Anuj? Or? I know. We can play this movie later. I would just quickly look at this one. Like I was talking about the Lura house, it shows that the ethos of peripheral experimentation, which is terrain, ecology, and materiality, can and should travel back to the city. So quickly talk about this house we're doing in Hyderabad. We found a huge 5 by 8 boulder and decided to build on around it. And we indented the perimeter and created these 4 petals to allow for landscape. There's some of the pictures of the model. The house is conceptualized as a lantern floating on almost a transparent base, and thin wooden slats envelop the entire first floor where the bedrooms are situated, creating a much needed privacy from surrounding buildings, while the ground floor is almost entirely glazed. This is the main approach which leads to the boulder, but we also have 3 to 4 meter high sourced columns which we have created and sourced to actually act as columns, so that you don't see conventional columns anywhere. You just see structure getting integrated into the glazing. And this is some of the current images of the house. The boulder we actually decided to tunnel through. So that's like was a crazy experiment which actually worked. And these are some images of how you can actually go from the foyer to one of the offices. Yeah, and just as a concluding statements, I want to say that these projects celebrate what's been possible in our practice thanks to the peripheries opening up as sites of architecture exploration, but they also raise questions for all of us. So as architects, how do we balance the freedom of peripheral context with the responsibility fragile landscapes demand? And yeah, so do peripheral landscapes challenge us to think differently about architecture's role, not only as a product, but also as something with ongoing relationship with site, ecology, and aspirations? Some of the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rohit, and you've opened up a lot of interesting concepts which we'll definitely take in our discussion. I will now invite Vandana to present her slides. Would you like to sit there and present? Sure. I will just open the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Anuj. Thank you for having me here, Rupali and C. And thank you to Puran and Rohit for really some beautiful work, and more than the work, their beautiful ideas and commitment to the kind of work that they do and believe in, and very, very inspiring. So that's us. We've been practicing all over the place. Early parts of our practice took us to Bhutan, a lot of learnings, and then we came back, and the early part of maybe the first 10 years, we did a lot of work in Khandala, Lonavala. But what I'm going to show you today is mainly the work that we've done in Alibag. We've been in Alibag since about the last 20 years, maybe. So small lesson from a teacher. We are in the Konkan, and that's the profile of the Konkan. It's a tilted plate of rock that comes down from the Sayadris and goes down to the sea. And the land between the hills and the sea is the most precious farmland we have. And we have no business to be there unless we're growing rice, but we are. And that's the first burden that we carry. So how do we build and how do we not build? So what the practice tries to do is not change the lay of the land, not cut the trees, try and convince our clients not to build on paddy lands. If you see all the villages in the area, you'll find that they're built on muram, on hard strata or on rock strata, because their bread and butter comes from the black cotton soil. So, how does one do this? Oh, that's. So here I have, I think we've seen that one before. Oh, I'll just use the cursor, yeah. And, and then that's the profile that has been a sort of a guiding line for us, if I can go back once more. And then the villages marked here are the villages and Ranjit and I have been building homes over these years. I'm going to start with a sort of a sketch we made a long time ago when we did a training center for the Edelweiss people. And here's a plot of land that we had, which had the overflow from the village pond that flowed through our land, and they were actually paddy fields. This part of the land was raised and it was rocky. So what we did then is not to take the fields away and tuck our buildings in where they did minimum harm. And that's what the built project now looks like. And they continue to grow things, sunflowers in winter. And so I think the buildings have to be subservient to the land you're occupying. And that was the lesson learned here. This was the first house that we ever built in Alibag. We wanted to hide. We were in a wadi, and of course, as both of them said, we didn't want to tamper with the existing trees. And so we found the only piece of land which didn't have any mango trees, and we plonked a house. The house is made out of recycled materials, windows and doors and things we found on the land. And that's how we started. So that's the house. Most of our houses have these funny shapes for two reasons. One is that they're always single tube houses because we want every room to have at least 2, if not 3 sides of windows. And also we're avoiding the trees, so we kind of zigzag around them. And that's how this house came about. We've never really gone away from the fact that houses in the Konkan especially are umbrellas under which you live. So the roof is very traditional and very large, and our spaces are contained within them. So that's the house that I showed you. It's just stretches across what was Tondli Wadi, so that we didn't feel so guilty removing. I wish I could hide the fact that I've got a swimming pool in every house I've built there, and that's not what we should be doing, and I've built a hell of a lot of swimming pools. So that's the upstairs. It sits in the lowest part of the land, and you can hardly see it. So the higher part of the land is the orchard. That's what it looks like. So we scavenged a lot of this wood from Bhangarwadis and Lakdi bazaars and a lot of those fancy eaves boards came from whatever we could find in Alibag. We were very enamored of Jeffrey Bawa, so we started making these toilets where you could have a bath with a courtyard outside, and all our houses have those. That's another house that we've done. As I told you, the hills really were very important for us. I showed you the diagram that, so all our houses, if there's a hill, you can look at, focus on the hill. This was a house where we used galvalume sheets, very simple, used locally sourced chira, and the land that it was built in has now become overgrown, and it's gone back to forest, which is fine. Again, the funny shape is because there used to be a clump of kher trees, which actually are the most common trees in the forest where my family comes from, and this belongs to Ranjit's elder sister. Unfortunately, the kher trees died over a course of time, so we have a courtyard now. So that's the shape of the house. It started with 3 kind of cubes, a living room, a bedroom block, and a little gazebo. And there was a stream running through So the whole house, we draped across the meadow. We were young and ridiculously impractical. Not a single room shares the same plinth as any other room. So we are walking up and down the house. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law are 80, and they're putting up with it now. So something to remember that we all grow old. But at that time, it was very exciting not to disturb the meadow and to build on it as it was. So that's the plan. The living room cube, and then the bedrooms are another cube. My brother-in-law loves to cook for the family, so the center of the whole house was the kitchen, and he could watch everybody and everybody could watch him. So that's the house on the land. That's what it looks like. This was one of the few houses where we used really good quality wood for doors and windows, but as the years went by, it became prohibitive and we couldn't do that anymore. It's exposed concrete and laterite. The whole house has got this beautiful mango-colored Jaisalmer stone. This is a house we did not too long ago. Again, it was a mango wadi, and it was so narrow, the available land, that the whole house is like a train. It's what you see as number 5 is a single set of rooms that go from back to front. And then we had a small loggia that led you to a living room in the garden. And then number 2 out there is a portico. And everything else is full of mango trees. But we managed to get right angles. So that's the house, and you come in, and then what we did is, it's like a lot of houses are like cabinets that you pull apart. And because they're so narrow, they can become like trains. So when you pull them apart, then they get courtyards, or they get double heights, or they get upstairs terraces that appear because you're pulling that, that narrow single room house apart. That's the first floor with a terrace, and that's what it looks like now. You know, we tended to do these water towers. And I remember there used to be a very quirky gentleman who ran a cafe there. And then when he saw these quirky towers coming, he actually became violent and came and fought with Ranjit and me, saying, "You're ruining Alibag and you're so insensitive and you got these towers." And we tried to tell him that we need gravity to feed water. But he had a point, maybe, you know. So those are the loggias, and that's what you see. The G+1 is just that very, very narrow house that's been pulled apart. And that's what it looks like with all the mango trees. I think what we share with both my colleagues here is this compulsion to make sure that the house is all about looking outside. This is another house that, again, is a tube house, and it faces the hills. So the architecture of the house was like a box being opened up. And there are chhajas, but they look like we just opened it up for the weekend, and it doesn't actually shut, but it looks like it'll shut. And then, again, this obsession with trying to make it disappear. So that's not wood, that's painted e-board sheets that we made into a kind of a facade that takes the house away and makes it into a shadow. Again, that's the way it is, and the whole house faces the hills. But we had the tower. That's the first floor with a terrace, a moon viewing terrace that the client said, moon rises on the east. So the veranda roof is such that when you're up on the terrace, it doesn't obstruct you and you can watch the moon rise. There it is. You can see the section, gable section, where you see the terrace from where you can see the moon rise. And we calculated the angle of the front veranda such that the peak, the hill, the ridge line of the hills was visible when you're sitting in the veranda and it's not cut off. So that was the exercise. There's the RSA tower, like it or not. That's the way the house looks. It's very similar materials. I have to tell you why we moved from load-bearing structures to frame structures. We did find black cotton in a lot of places, and it's deadly. We learned that lesson in the first house that I showed you. We developed cracks after a while. And so the best thing to do is to, insert columns strategically into the ground so that you can get a grade slab. You don't have to remove soil. You don't have to tamper with the original lay of the land. And you can build with a frame structure. So that's what we adopted. This is another house that we did, which again, it wrapped around two extremely beautiful tamarind trees. We were idiotic urban people who didn't realize that tamarinds are wild animals. And when you start watering and introducing them to surfeit of water, they become like completely wild. And they started overrunning the house. They started getting into all the door frames. And they were there probably for over 100 years, and we had to murder them. And so this house, really, it hurts me to say that we built this Teda Meda house because we wanted to celebrate the tamarinds, but our foolishness meant one day the tamarinds had to go. And that hurt. So you can see that there's a skylight in the dining room at the end, over which the tamarind formed a canopy. And now I have to put a sunshade there because I had to get rid of the tamarind. And then the local farmer said, "We could have told you that. That was stupid of you. Why didn't you?" A lot of these details have been developed by my husband, who loved detailing his buildings. I lost him about 7 months ago, so it's a eulogy to his work. And he developed these MS steel windows and doors for a lot of his homes. A lot of the furniture that you see, the bar, the ceilings, a lot of that is Ranjit, typical Ranjit. So that was the house on the right that you can see. That's the Teda Meda house with where we got a courtyard around which we built. And then the owners decided that they wanted to move into what they called a cottage, except he wanted a one very large room cottage. So we moved here. Again, wanted to really tuck it out of the way so that the land was not disturbed. And so it's kind of this funny layout. The new house also faces the hills. These are some of the drawings of the older house. That's how the old house looks through, interior shots. Oh, by the way, this was when the tamarind tree still existed. You can see it through the skylight. Now that the tamarind tree is gone, there's a champa trying to grow there. Pathetic. You can see the hills in the background. This is a new house. I've also gone modern. I used insulated metal, puff panel roof instead of using tiles. And what we did is that we used a truss. We'd been experimenting with steel a lot in the old days when we built in Khandala. So the whole house rests on a truss, which we filled with louvers. But now what has happened is, and that was the intent, you can see the young trees, all the trees have grown, and so the whole house has a filtered, sort of a moving tree light that comes in the mornings, and it's quite pleasant actually now. So I don't think I have an interior picture of I do, but not a big one. So that's the medley of all the kind of work we do and the kind of details that we evolve. They're very, very simple, very simple. materials are usually locally sourced. There's only once that I think in this house that we sourced the stone from a little distance away because, as Puran said, clients are building an aspirational house and she didn't like the red and she didn't like the black, and I don't like plaster and paint. So then we had to settle for getting the stone in from a long distance off, but it's quite beautiful actually. Okay, that's me. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you. I think this is precisely the kind of work that we wanted to closely understand. And one thing, so a few kind of things that I was able to crystallize. I'll try to summarize. One is, it was interesting that in each of your presentations you used a map to show the proximity of these places from the city, and you located many kind of points where it's always like the distance is always between 100 to 120 kilometers, and then you move on to a map which is like a large parcel of land, and the land that you have to build on is always much bigger than the house that you need to build. And that is one dilemma which I see that all of you have to kind of pass through in proposing that what site forces do you respond to. And in that, the question that comes is that how does one formulate one's architectural brief? Because there is, like you also mentioned, that you liberate yourself from the bylaws, you have a lot of sensitive landscape and nature. And in those kinds of things, what I observe is that, most of the projects that we see kind of so one of the things that one of my friends who was reading this brief also kind of formulated is that there is a certain kind of way in which we have absorbed proposing a house in the modernist kind of idiom, which is in dialogue with the Korea and Doshi kind of language of very like, even when the landscape is very unruly and modulating and non-orthogonal, the we still kind of tend to make very straight lined our the geometries of our homes never kind of draw in some sense from the unruliness of the landscape. Like the houses are still orthogonal, and they have to then negotiate the kind of curved contours and so on. So I am kind of very interested in two aspects of this. One is that, of course, there's the functional aspect which drives these layouts. How does the architect in such kind of a condition go on to formulate the architectural brief, and how do you also reinvent in every iteration that you go, you learn from the previous, and then you enter into a new site with a new context, but also pull the learnings from the previous? And what is the and therefore what is the uh, aesthetic functional brief that one sets when you are not bounded in the bylaws and codes and stuff like that? So if all of you could respond to that.
Hi. So it's a very simple thing for me. You go to the site, sit on the grass, and start eating it. pick the grass and start eating it. That's how you relate with the site. That's how the site talks to you. You speak to the site. You internalize it. Or you go to a mango orchard and start picking out cherries and start munching on them. Just sense it. Just feel the space. I think a whole lot, just bringing a bit of seriousness into this, a whole lot of answers come to you when you spend time on the site. When you give it all of your senses and you start your instincts coming to the fore and relating with the site. Where do I want to build on a 9-acre site is not going to just come sitting in my studio and placing it in my head somewhere, trying to imagine it. I need to be there. I need to be there on that mountain, looking into the water to see how am I respecting the contour, how am I respecting the context, which is the king in this case. There's a lake and there are forts looking at me. I need to make sure that the whole idea of the client is to be on that hill, to be able to consume and internalize the context. We've been talking about this through this last 1 hour. Looking out. Now, looking out is just one aspect of me designing. I need to be able to imagine what am I looking out to and how honest am I about that. If I'm in a mango wadi, then the trees are the kings. When I am among forts and water body, then that's the king as a context. When I am in a man-made township, then whatever has been offered, what's been there, becomes my starting point. So yes, I will go and sit there at the site. I'll be doing that again, hopefully later this year, early next year, on the same mountain, going and building another one. This time we've been going on for a year or more. Puran kahan banana hai? I said, I don't know. We have to go and be there. We'll spend time. We'll sit there. We'll walk up and down and we'll open our arms and we'll feel the breeze. We'll see the environment, internalize it, and we'll see. I think what's important here is when we talk about the context, the important thing is how much of your being is available to align with the project. Everything for me is a function of that. Everything comes after that. My response to what I see around me, what I feel around me, has got to be such that the architecture becomes incidental. I've spoken to students, I've spoken to colleges at the Mango House, even at Pavna for that matter, that architecture has to be incidental. While there's a grandeur, there's a scale, and I'm not going away, there are swimming pools, guilty of that, as Vandana said. But those are aspirations. What's not to be forgotten is why are you there in the first place? To enjoy the cool and the calm of that space, to hear the breeze in your ears, to hear the birds in the morning, to be able to see if you have some sliver of sun or something about the sun path that's becoming one with architecture. For me, all of those things really, really matter. I'd like to hear from you guys as well. And I think your questions are many, one on top of the other. We'll go one by one on those.
Yeah, I agree with Puran that it's highly contextual. So if you see in our portfolio, I think each work looks different because obviously the context is different. But also I would say that a large part of it is also the brief of the client. So for example, if you have like a 10-acre site, but your house is a tiny one, let's say, then your entire approach will be very different as opposed to building a 20,000 square feet house on the same plot. Because if you have that kind of a brief, then even if you, I mean, for you may not be able to have the freedom to go around trees, and very often we don't have the luxury of doing that. So then what do you do? So you have to maybe cut those trees, but then compensate by doing some kind of a planting or something on the to actually make sure that they are regrown. So a lot of back and forth happens after we get the brief. So when you know how much you want to build, then the question arises, okay, then do I sprawl the building? And also along with the brief comes so we also ask very detailed questions to the client about the lifestyle. So a lot of these clients, ironically, even if they want to go to Alibag, they want glass houses. So they don't want to, so often we tell them, okay, go to Alibag, why don't you have deep verandas where you can spread out on. But they say, no, I'm afraid of creepy crawlies. You give me, wo sab band hona chahiye. But then we say, okay, band hona chahiye, but it can also open. It need not be always shut. So glass boxes is something which we have to constantly, educate clients. But so some of them are also open to sprawl. So like Vandana's projects, for example, you can have a walkway, go 50 meters and have a room. And that actually is very good because though your footprint on the site is larger, it's actually not disturbing the ecology that much. So you can sprawl and but a lot of clients are not open to that kind of a living. They need everything which is one. So they recently we got a project where they want the client is sure that she wants a G+1. I said, why G+1? Because how do you know that there's any view? She said, no, it's not about view. I just want a smaller footprint so I feel safe. And it's difficult to then change the mindset. I mean, if you and you don't want to air condition those corridors, which are 100 meters, and that's then going on the other side. But so a lot of, I think, ideation and form thinking also comes from a dialogue with the client. Sometimes they this client in Alibag wanted arches, and an arch language did actually emerge, and we're happy that it did because ultimately it's a nice project. But it's not something which should otherwise done. Like, she hadn't said I want arches, we wouldn't have given arches, but sometimes we resist. I mean, if we want some bizarre features, we actually say no. Yeah, I mean, to answer your question, a lot of factors, and one of the large factors I feel is understanding what the client wants.
Of the burden. I don't think you want to hear this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Yeah. When we first went there, you were supposed to build a 150 square meter house if you were a farmer. But we weren't farmers. We were rich people, comparatively. And so we were breaking the rules by saying we are not building a house, we're building a horticulture farm, a piggery, a stud farm. We were lying. And we were getting somebody else to do the dirty work by saying, I'm just the design consultant, I've got a sanctioned architect. That's a burden. Now the rules have changed finally, and we can regularize what we've done because we get 0.2% of the land, and make it a home. And it's justice because those farmers who live there, living in a 1,500 square foot house with 3 generations, however big or small your land holding is, you can't build more. And it was as it should be because this is the breadbasket of Maharashtra. Having said that, they have got their due because they can live in a bigger home now, and they can afford it, of course. Why do you assume there are 2 rules for 2 people? That's a burden. Of course, then there is the use of freshwater sources. There is a guy a few houses down from one of the houses I showed you, who not only built a large house with an Olympic-sized pool because he could afford it, but he drove in 12 bore wells, kid you not, because he said, I want it. This kind of greed we took there, you know. Luckily, I wasn't his architect. I couldn't have lived with that much burden. But there are things, there are mistakes we've made. Now it's urbanizing. We've got our first high-rise there. It's going to become like Mira Bhayandar very soon. We just don't value what we had. We're going to forget leisure and a nice home, but we're going to kill that agricultural land forever and ever. I built there for 20 years. It's a burden.
Revealing that, kind of building a house in the name of a piggery or a shelter. And these are the ways in which we enter what you were calling wilderness, or what we call the outside, the escape. And we escape into what and how. So if you have any stories to share about these kinds of
So Anuj, I need to be honest, Vandana, to you too. We try and resist. I do not know how many architects resist. We resist. We resist a lot. We fight a lot. A lot, which is possibly why we don't build as much as the other architects do. I'm happy with that. Happy with doing less, doing something that makes That makes largely a lot of sense, and we get to sleep. So we don't really go overboard with too many things. If you saw 5-element house standing on that hill overlooking the lake, I don't know how many of you guys go to Pavna. Have you guys been there for water sports or seeing the forts or trekking? You can't see the house from the road. The access road of the house does not let you have that house stick out like a sore thumb on that hill. I have no cover. I'm on top of that mountain. I didn't have a choice. The only choice I saw, and this friend of mine, the client who saw it together with us, he went along, is that I didn't want the house to be seen, despite the fact that the landscape at that time was not there. It's subsequently been done. They've now planted thousands of trees in and around the house. I have not shot that and I haven't seen it recently. But when we finished the house, you could not see the house because one, it merged with the entire landscape. The landscape was brown in the summer, green in the monsoons. I stayed in that palette, even though I had built a frame structure. Pitch roofs talked to the hills. The fact that it was fragmented made sure that it was not a humongous mass of concrete and construction. And the tonality. And I believe tonality is a very, very big factor. When we are among the green, we are trying to respond within the green and the earth. When we are on a bushy and a landscape terrain, we're trying to respond to that. So for me, the guilt is that much less because I am extremely sensitive towards where I am, what am I building. I did show you one case study which is in my portfolio simply because every architect wants to get a commission, get a project under his belt, and there could be things that he's compromising with. So I did compromise with the fact that I was building completely against the grain of that space, that lay of the land, as Vandana mentions about. But we did that because we wanted to see how much can we bring them closer to what it should have. So yeah, no such things about the permissions which have to be very different. NA now is a tool. The space in Alibag, whether it is that or the design lab, or we are going to be doing something else also, will have NA, we will go legally. The only one place that I can think about in Pamna is it started with a hospitality, a motel kind of a permission, which is available in Kamshet and in around there. But it is a homestay, so the guilt is that much diluted because it has become a commercial space as well. It's with Lohono or one of the stays. So yes, to answer your question, no. As far as possible, I will fight. I will continue to fight and will resist what is not gelling with you, what's not aligning with your conscience.
Rohit, you said a very interesting point in your last comment about, I read it as, the idea of sprawling. And when you sprawl, you then don't need to air condition it. It's a very interesting strategy to kind of almost subvert the cosmopolitan kind of aspiration to go in the wilderness with. So I want to kind of use this as an opportunity to understand what are the what are the kinds of aspirations and imaginations that clients want architects to, cater to or address, and how rational or irrational do you find them, and then how do you kind of translate that dialogue into a more meaningful way of deploying into your design? And please feel free to respond if any of you feel you have something to add.
Yeah, I think the bulk of the people who approach us, and we've probably seen our portfolio and the kind of work we do, so they do come to us with a thought about, okay, you want a second home, and if you stay in a apartment in Mumbai, you want to go somewhere where you can actually, enjoy the landscape and enjoy the nature. So a lot of the clients do come to us with the mandate that, okay, I want something which is inside out. I don't want something which is enclosed. The one I actually mentioned earlier were the exceptions to the rule rather than the rule. But so more often than not, of late we are aligned to the client's briefs. It's not someone who comes up with a bizarre brief that I want like a fort or something like a 3-story fort in the heart of Alibag or something. It has not happened, thankfully. But having said that, we still need to educate them because their aspirations could be something which is unrealistic. For example, if you like someone wanted, let's say, enclosed multi-purpose tennis court or whatever, enclosed meaning then it's all weather proof, and then that means you need to actually not only make a provision, because a tennis court is a huge size, a huge kind of investment, and if you were to make it all weather proof, you need to cover it, you need to have infrastructure, may also, I don't know, if it's raining, put in some kind of a cooler system, or services rather. So but we are kind of, they're also encouraging people to work with spaces which are multifunctional. So actually use an open space, but you can also use it for, let's say, recreation. You can use it for sports. You can use it for barbecue. So when you kind of do that, you minimize intervention on site. So then instead of because 10,000 square feet house or a 5,000 square feet carpet area becomes 10,000 very easily, because the moment you add patios and walkways and verandas and whatnot, your overall built area becomes double, and that's what you have to kind of tell them, that you don't need to kind of go overboard with that. And the typology helps. So sprawl to a certain extent does help, because it reduces the verticality of the place and preserves trees if at all. But if there are no trees, or if there are no natural features you want to kind of negotiate with, then having a smaller footprint, or like what we did for the house on the stream, where you have minimal footprint but cantilever out, is actually something which is worth exploring. But early on in our practice, we use a lot of concrete, and we are like, experiment with concrete forms. Then realize that, okay, concrete is not the best material, actually very high carbon footprint. So we don't really use exposed concrete or any concrete even now. So we are doing a large development in Kamshet, where we're consciously educating clients to use cross-laminated timber, like CLT or glue lam technology, which is there in India. A lot of clients are still getting educated, and it is marginally expensive than doing a conventional RCC structure. But then the advantage is you have a low carbon footprint. But if you have the awareness of actually doing that, then it's great. We're also looking at rammed earth as another sustainable option to actually build in. And a lot of clients who are coming to us, then they know, because rammed earth has a rustic look, but if you have the sensitivity for it, it's actually a very good carbon sustaining material. So these are some of the kind of, it's not only maybe the form, but also materiality, which is very, very important. Because the same building done in exposed concrete versus rammed earth would be a totally different experience. And that's what we want to kind of educate the clients.
Vanna, I wanted to ask you about the story of swimming pools. And all of your projects had swimming pools and large swimming pools. So what is this obsession with the swimming pool in the second home? Do all of them swim in these pools at all?
One rider. My swimming pools are getting smaller as the decades go by. So yeah, it is that thing, like the second home, the aspirational home, the bathroom, which is at least twice as much, because however wealthy you are, if you live in a Bombay apartment, you ain't got a very large bathroom. That's the norm. So there are these things that come with the idea of a second home. We don't have water. They're buying tankers of water. The tankers are run by mafias. There's a big chakkar behind it. Burden. So it's just being responsible, right? Having said that, there are ways you can put swimming pools, cut down on evaporation. It gives a great amount of pleasure. Everybody who's got a swimming pool in Alibag, the weather's right, they enjoy it. So I think I sort of dramatize my burden sometimes. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But it's just that the whole of Alibag has these pools now. And when you exponentially start multiplying what's happening, then it gives you pause, So that's the only reason. Otherwise, yeah, I'm a swimmer myself, and I think it's a very pleasurable activity.
So just to add to that, I'll again go back to the case studies. One of my clients is a swimmer. He was a swimmer as serious as state level or national level. So had to build a pool for him. I fought for the position of the pool though. And the pool kept moving through the project to 3, 4 locations. And none of those gelled with me. And I sat on that for more than a year before deciding the location of the pool, which had to then not be a sore thumb again, not just be an add-on because the pool was needed. It needed to talk to the house. It needed to talk to the context. It did not need to be that cliched infinity pool. It needed to be something that was an extension of the house, a cultural center. So a swimmer, but with the architecture not being disrespected. She's right. The kind of emotion that the swimming pool actually evokes in a breakaway space or a weekend space is unparalleled. So we should not castrate the people who have the aspiration of building that. Some people don't have it. The first Ambi house did not have it because the Ambi rules were different. Now the rules are different, and the family said, "Puran pool pehle banega, ghar baad mein banega." And I understand because they're entertaining there, their friends and extended social circle. They do want to have an activity which we can't enjoy at home in the city, and they can afford it. So I won't hold it against people. As architects, we do carry that burden of doing some things which are demanding. Having said that, as Vanna rightly says, if you are sensitive and you're sensible towards your natural resources, you can minimize waste, you can curtail sizes, you can ensure that you are somehow recycling and making sure that the burden of the natural resources is minimized. We try and do that. If you're conscious people, if you're sensitive people, architects who are going to be responsible for these sensibilities to be in the right place, then we would have the formula. We'll have the balance.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to this idea of landscape. If I was to summarize these observations, this whole thing of establishing an inside-outside relationship all kind of crystallizes into two primary kind of typologies of second homes. One is, a pavilion in the wilderness, like you have an open kind of space in the forest, and second is it'll always have this mix of the hotel kind of recreational idea with the in a pavilion like thing. But I want to kind of ask you all uh, if there were any other models of that you try to explore in establishing this inside outside relationship. Like, what are the new kind of ways in which this inside outside relationship can be nuanced? And let me kind of pull this idea that you spoke about the tamarind tree and its unruliness, or the boulder that you were talking about. And so how do we then kind of learn from these landscapes which are otherwise not available to us in the urban context, and what do we do to them in our setting up of the home? So I just wanted to kind of understand that, were there any learnings from these landscape which informed the built form in any way? And can probably be explored further in architectural practice beyond these two primary typologies of the pavilion in wilderness and the hotel cum recreational space.
Yeah, so speaking specifically of the Lura house in Hyderabad, it was a crazy idea to actually we had. I mean, we weren't even sure that once the slab was cast on the column on the boulder, if it would crack, and if it cracked, then that was that. And leave aside the fact that we want to tunnel through, and actually we wanted to do 3 tunnels, but now the structural engineer is saying ek kafi hai. So we wanted a skylight and we want a separate tunnel, but that's not happening. No, but coming back to the fact that obviously it's a raw boulder and it's not something which is curated like the other column which I was talking about. Those are very different. Those are sculpted, but they are more like sculptures which are acting like load bearing. This one has actually been there since the one in the middle was a pre-existing one. The one which we did in the periphery were actually like brought from neighboring quarry and then sculpted, and yeah, they were not actually Yeah, huge, huge. Got by cranes and whatever. But they're still like sculptures or like let's say typical landscape features. But the raw boulder is actually quite raw because when you actually, and it has layers of, you can see layers of aging on it. It's not really, you can see that it's when you actually walk. I don't know how many of you go for treks, but when you actually go to uh, encounter boulders in the wilderness, that's how it is. And you have an odd tree growing from it and whatnot. And to actually then build around it is a very different experience because how much intervention can you do? You don't want to touch it and you want to polish it. You want to retain it as it is. But at the same time, it has to be livable because all your main spaces are around it. You have the main foyer, you have the staircase which wraps around it. So a lot of learnings as to what to do and what not to do, how restrained you need to be with this. Um, yeah, again, great learning. But coming back to the landscape and integration within the house, I think, and also the idea of a pool. So in the Dua Villa, where we actually got the pool right into the house. So part of the pool is actually you open a window and then you have some kind of a sunk, like almost like a jacuzzi area with a skylight. So it feels very inside. But at the same time, when you get into it, you actually swim along, and 50 meters down, you're in the outside pool. So it's almost like a very interesting experience going through, almost like a water body which enters the house, so to speak. So, and we also feel that just visual landscapes are different, but we like to kind of engage with them more, in a sense, more, the right word is, I guess, more viscerally, if you were, because it then feels. So we rarely have lawns. We would do pathways which have wild grass, and we want to kind of maintain the ecosystem as much as possible instead of then, because lawns actually take a lot of water, and then that's something which we don't really want to advocate. We also discourage clients to, to have a lawn, and more clients are now becoming aware that lawn is not the only landscape, because like you said, hotel landscapes and resorts, you have the acres of lawn and a few bougainvillas here and there. And that's not how a landscape is now evolving into much more layered landscape, which actually then adds to the biodiversity of the site. We also look at connecting animal corridors, if at all there are. So create that in case the site is huge enough so that you can encourage. We obviously the client has to be open to it, but that's how we start thinking about it also.
The idea of biodiversity and endemic planting, it's kind of becoming more accepted now. And there used to be someone from a student of mine, actually, someone who worked with us, who was stationed in Alibag, who every year would have a sale of local trees, and they did very well. People were willing. What you said about, that if they get it. I mean, if people are willing to go with those ideas, and they would rather um, accept those. And someone has to tell them that yes, it's as beautiful. You get these springtime flowers, and so I guess there is a change in the way people are also understanding landscapes and looking at them, which is interesting. That.
No, definitely. And as people are traveling widely and then looking at other landscape across the world, like obviously Bawas, Lunuganga is one, but even landscapes in Europe, and it's much more eye-opening. So your typical idea of landscape, how it was 30 years or 20 years back, is no longer relevant anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, before I open it to the audience, I wanted to come back to the first question and again framing it. What about the conventionality of form? Like if we don't have restrictions of the city, then can the form actually, because otherwise it's containing, it will still contain, but how do we can then the form be experimented and given a new kind of edge, a new kind of dimension, and why is it not happening enough in practice?
Because architecture is not a acrobat's job. I think there's a language, the human beings who reside in it. There's an order that we live with. Yes, we experiment, and we saw some very beautiful options today. But it's not about being different, for God's sake. It's not about even sculptors, the finest of the world's sculptors, work within their rules that come to them, you know. So I think I do believe that there is a need for that language. It, it could be circular arches, it could be whatever. I'm not saying the idea of order is the orthogonal, but I do have serious reservations about if I didn't have a restriction, I wouldn't build like that. People come to us because they see our work, and that's who we are. That's the way we work. That's the language and materiality and detailing that we work with. And every project is a learning for us. Mr. Iyer told me this, that every project for an architect, you go back to the drawing board. We all use that phrase. So we do go back to the drawing board. But we have our convictions, right? You can't debunk what you've done last year. You build on it. So I don't think this idea of I don't believe that we lose our ability to experiment because of outside pressures.
Yeah, I also feel that, and that's exactly the reason why I showed you the Lura house, because it's a very tight urban site, and the reason we have done this form is because we had a reason to do this. And honestly, it was one of the 4 ideas we had pitched to the client, very Vastu conscious clients, and from Hyderabad, and they agreed to this, which was great. We never thought this will go through. But the reason we did this is we don't normally do these shapes, and it actually really made sense in the context. But coming back to your point, I feel the people who do experiment with the forms, they do it anyway. So they would do regardless. Yeah, so if you given them a tight urban spot, like a plot, they would still do that, and it won't change. I mean, I may be wrong, but I feel that's also...
No, I'm coming from a place where, you know, it's often like the urban context is lamented for to impose you or entangle you in its laws, and therefore you have to deliver it like deliver space like a product. But when I was thinking about this question, I was thinking about, say for example, the experiments of Nari Gandhi, or the experiments of like, I don't know if you know of this project called House for the Poem of Right Angle, where, you know, it's completely in between a forest, and it is kind of turning and twisting to the way in which the landscape itself is moving, and it directs you to look at very specific things in the landscape, and then it kind of becomes a container without being burdened by conventional order. Not that it does not have its order in itself. So that's where I was coming from.
I hear you, Anuj. So I understand the kind of predicament that you come from in your head. But I think I align with what Vandana is trying to say also, Rohit. We are people who are going to be inhabiting that space. We are human beings, and we have, as she says, we have a certain order. So just because we don't have bylaws or we don't have regulations squeezing us, we can't go haywire. We can, but I think the general tendency is to have something that lasts for consumption by human beings for a long time. Our architecture must outlast us, right? It will most certainly outlast us. That's the whole idea. We build so that what we build stays beyond us, which means that it is not for today, it's not for the shock value, it's not for pleasing someone today, or saying, hey, listen, you know what, I am a better designer than you are. No. The purpose of architecture is its consumption over a sustained period of time, generations if possible. So if we are working towards that, we need to keep that in mind when we are arriving at a form. There's one more layer to this. Now, I may be saying something very cliched, but for us, the form simply follows function, simply. I know all of you have heard it, you've ridiculed it, maybe tried to understand, but I'm still a student who follows what is the need of that house or that space. The mango house has got its footprint thanks to the trees on all sides. There's a little, going back to the learning point, sorry, I wanted to make that point the last time we were talking about it, learning from a site at the mango house, apart from everything else. So we had the plinth carved out, the kitchen in the east, was with a tree abutting it. And we had taken that into account while we went on the drawing board, reach the site and you mark it, it's all good. And you start digging and you come to the foundation and you realize that you didn't take the roots into account. So we had to go back to the drawing board, and as the roots were to grow for years to come, we moved the space so as to accommodate that in the form. It's another story that 3 years later, once the house was built, that tree passed away and we lost our sleep because I believed that I may have contributed towards that. But turns out that every doctor, every tree doctor and everybody from the village confirmed that it's that kida, that white kida that gets into the tree and nothing can save the tree. And it was not the roots because of which it died. But the point is you respect what you learn, and then you make sure that the next time that you are there with a footprint, you're not ignoring the fact that there is as much below the ground as there is above the ground in terms of its. So that's the learning part. But the form, you're not going crazy simply because you have to have it last in your consumption and your sensibilities forever. I think forever, for as long as the building can support it. That comes first. Experimentation and going wild with your imagination, I think is not on the top of everybody's head. We all want to do something beyond what we've done, but we can't be experimenting at the cost of what I've already spelled. That's important.
To add to that, so it's not, and having said that, it's not also the fact that we only do orthogonal buildings. So a lot of sites of the demand that, you have contoured sites, so the Himalayan mountain home has a boomerang shape. And the reason it has that is because you have a 270-degree view of the Himalayas. So why would you do an orthogonal house and have corners? So many a times it's also the site and the kind of response you have to that which kind of evokes the form. And we're also doing a house in Kutch now. Because the climate, it's actually a circular house. Actually, the site is square, but we're doing a circular house and we have a courtyard inside. And the overall idea is minimal openings. The overall idea is to respond to the harsh Kutch climate and how that kind of form almost embraces and cocoons the space inside. So it's also
Or you're getting a form because of the rock or because of the stream that you want to pass, that allow to pass through. I think we got your question a bit wrong, that it's not experimentation because you suddenly feel free of shackles, but the experimentation is because you're searching for what is right. Yes, and then if it is the form that emerges is the form that emerges. That's true. I respect that, I really respect that. Having said that, how many architects in this room, none of us will ever have an identical solution to a problem. So, I mean, it's who you are.
It's your response,
Yeah.
exactly. So talking about 5-element house, as he reminds me about it, it was one composite structure. We kept designing and evolving. 5 years, 7 years hence, the kids grew up, they became teenagers and beyond. And we said, okay, let's just explode the house and give them the space. But not taking away the fact that entire frontage of Pavna Lake had to be respected from every part of the house. So the parts exploded, and that led to a form which was not how it was planned earlier. But it just turned out to be that. So it's a lot of organic growth. I'm sure you guys would agree about that. It's everybody's take on what you think the problem is, the design problem. The solution is your own. The solution is your own. You believe that there's a stream or there's a boulder or there's a view or there's a tree that's posing a problem on site, but there's a solution and that's your own. I think that's the key.
I would, while I am lingering with my thoughts, I would like to open it to the audience to, you know, ask away their questions, any comments about the project. Do we have an extra mic or we? Here, to Rupali. Was there a question at the Avi? Okay, you take your time. Take your time.
Thank you, Puran, Rohit, and Vandana. Lovely presentation. So my question was around how we look at, like when we document built architecture, and when you talk about, so many concepts of light and the inside and the outside, and how you intend the space to be utilized. But so many times the architecture, the way it gets documented, is often without. It's just about the finishes and the material, and it's without people. It's without the life. So my question to you all, and this I'm sure this must have come in conversation before, but I wanted to know from your conversations or experience if you have revisited a site, if it has been the way you intended to be used, has it like deviated from that and become something else, or you get what I'm saying? Like it how architecture gets lived after it gets documented. Thank you.
So yes, I think architecture wins only if it is used well, not about it standing well and making a statement about the architect. I'll go beyond human beings. And to your seniors or to your people from the college who may have visited the Mango House, I would tell them that the architecture was so incidental that the gulls would come in or the birds would come in, perch on the railing, poop, and take a flight across the house. I think you feel comfortable inside a space, and that's the winner. We've always seen people in the houses that we've built, at least we can speak about our experience, and they keep coming back and say, Puran, been enjoying this for 10 years, been enjoying this for like ever. People grow up, people who are not as matured grow up and realize there's so much more to discover over years in architecture that you build. That I think is the winner. It's not about just documenting it as a building or building it as a structure. It's about how it ages with generations that occupy that space. I've always believed in that. And fortunately, because you're aligned with that thought, we have the feedback that supports that. I don't want to take too much time. I'm hoping you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, not, also revisiting sites brings back a lot of learnings. For example, some of the early projects, you go back 5 or 10 years down the line, then you realize that some materials which you had conceptualized may not really be relevant in that kind of way. Because when you're maybe way back when you're doing your first or second project, we are dreamers, right? And you want to use the best, or you want to use materials which you always wanted to use, but not necessarily which are appropriate to that place and time. So very often we go back and realize that, okay, this is not aged as well as I thought it would and could have an alternate solution. So that's some of the learnings we can get when you go back. Also, landscape forms a very important part, because when we do the house, the landscape is very, it's very infant landscape. But when it matures after 5 to 10 years, the house really looks very different. And then you realize that the power of landscape or the intervention of landscape in a house. So it's a totally different experience walking in a mature garden as opposed to a new garden. And that's something also which you realize.
Um, Rupali has a question. And there's one question right at the back. And okay, so maybe we can start there and then kind of constellate here.
Hi, I'm Dhanika. So when building in the peri-urban, do you think regionalism has to play a role? And secondly, every time we build, we are making a mark on the new regional identity. So how should we proceed with this idea that we are sort of creating the language of what is coming up here in this space next?
That's a really nice question. I live within that tenet. It doesn't work for everybody. It doesn't work for a lot of architects. It doesn't work for a lot of clients also. And so it's horses for horses. There are people who want a very unique house. And for instance, there is this house in Alibag that um, who has built, it's on the hill, it looks like, yes, that's the one, the Malik House. Now, I have to confess that when I saw it, I said it's, I was I ran it down and I said it looks like a spaceship that crashed. And because for me, it was so out of place for the Alibag that I knew. But then I saw the insides of that house, and I changed my mind because what he tried to do was very different from probably where I was coming from. I don't think he intended it to be a regional style at all. He was just enjoying being up on that hill. So while there is no right and wrong in however disparate your responses may be, I think regionalism is very important because we live within the richness of its culture. And yeah, like you experiment with materials and you keep adding new materials, and why not? Because that's the way we morph and change. But I think it's we've gone there for a purpose. We've gone there because we want to belong, and then not to belong becomes sometimes anomaly in that sense, yeah.
Also, I think regionalism to us is also of belonging to that place. So it's not only taking a build like a already existing build typology and using it to become of that place. So many other factors also come to play, like you use local materials, you kind of but because you're constantly reinventing, and it's not always necessary that what was appropriate 50 100 years back is relevant now. I think it's if it kind of justifies being on that spot, it's not it doesn't act as a like something which stands out for the sake of standing out. Then I feel that if it's contextual enough, then it can rightfully have its place there.
From Neil and then come to Rupali.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Lovely work again. I've been following your work since a long time. I had a question actually in two parts. First one was when you look at all these projects, they come with immense privilege. The client comes from a very specific class, and as an architect, getting these kind of projects comes with immense privilege. So I mean, the question is more about the idea of self, which you constantly introspect, of getting that immense responsibility. I mean, you get the opportunity of experimenting, the opportunity of developing the idea of architecture around us also. That's one of the major first questions which I have. And the second part was I want to have an example, like you look at practice of Carlos Carpa, let's say Jeffrey Baba or Bijoy Jain. So when you look at Bijoy Jain also, he's done very limited projects. All of them majority of them are extremely privileged clients. And when you look at his practice, I mean, of course, the basis of his practice is this rigorous, immense amount of money and, of course, time spent. But the way he practices, he tries to rethink and break the conventional idea of architectural practice. When you look at the plans, it's very simple. Again, everything works with the idea of context. All of these factors are there, but the factor of privilege adds it. And then the things which he can do with the privilege, and I mean, you can see that after his descendant like Samira, you can see Samuel, and you can see Anand Patel. You can see all of these young graduates from Bijoy also learning these kind of works and also implementing them. So that impact that opportunity to impact is very important. Like even Carlos Carpa has done very less project, even Jeffrey Baba has done very less project, but that impact which they had now is because of the privileges they had. I want to know more question about that idea of self which you constantly are introspecting to address this, or if you could. Yeah.
Who's the question addressed to? Also, are you actually just thinking out aloud, or you're questioning something here? But yeah, I hear you. You're right about that. These things go hand in hand. The response becomes exceptional when there is a bit of a privilege attached to it. I will not deny that. Having said that, you've confused me, and thank you for that. Because I belong a little bit to both the worlds, where I think that privilege is an added tool for architecture to explore itself. but need not necessarily be abused. So I try not to abuse the privilege that I get as an architect to explore. And I don't want to talk about the architects that you've talked about. Of course, there are views and there are views. There is the functional aspect, there's the aesthetic aspect, there is the exhibitional aspect, there is the experimental aspect. There are lots of these aspects to architecture that we practice. But I like to stay as grounded as possible despite the availability of the privilege as a practice. I don't know how better to define that. Again, I'm hoping that whoever is able to understand at that level is able to understand. How do you tell yourself to stay grounded while I have the availability, while I have the abundance? How not to put, as one of my clients and my dear friend tells me, how not to put two noses on a face and more than 2 years on a face is a challenge that we architects have. And we like to live that. I thrive in that. I constantly fight myself through the process of the entire design development and construction to see that I don't do the unnecessary, that I somehow try and keep the privilege to as limited as possible. I could be abstract about this, but please try and understand where I'm coming from.
No, it's a very good question. And while you were asking that question, I was also kind of made me think. And you're absolutely right. It's you need to have those kind of clients to be able to kind of experiment in a way. But having said that, the kind of experiments we do are more towards, let's say, like I mentioned, sustainability. So for example, you don't want to build in concrete, or you, for example, you could be privileged. You could have a privileged client, and you could spec a 10,000 rupee marble for example, or a chandelier, whatnot. But so that's a different kind of privilege. But if you have the means, then you educate the clients to go sustainable, and then that obviously adds to. For example, if you instead of building in concrete, if you build with cross-laminated timber, or if you build with glue lam technologies, they're definitely more expensive because they're still nascent. But it does a world of good. I mean, your entire carbon footprint is negative if you use timber, for example, so, or if you use rammed earth. So we kind of then try to inculcate these kind of thoughts and technologies and practices to these privileged clients, hoping that they will kind of come towards and start adopting these technologies. Because more people then do it, obviously you're looking at mass marketing, and then eventually 10 years down the line, you probably have more people doing CLTs and glue lam. So, I don't know if it answers the question, but it's...
I just want to turn his question on its head. Privilege is not about how much money. It's about how much you can afford. I've done a 35 lakh home, and the person I built it for felt extremely privileged. I don't think it's about the rich or the poor. It's the fact that when you build a house as a client, you feel privileged. There's a saying in Gujarati that says, Ghar kech ke mane bandhi ne juo. It's a privilege for anybody to build a house. Make no mistake. And whether you're spending 35 crores or you're spending 3 crores or 3 lakhs, it's an effort, because all of us, when we build a roof over our heads, it's probably the biggest expenditure we make in our lives. So what's less privileged about building a smaller home? I think it's wrong to label this as being right or wrong, because everybody puts their heart into the home they own, I think it's important for us all. And as architects, imagine the burden. I don't want to use that word again. Imagine the privilege you carry, that you are building for somebody who is building that ghar, that unique home that they are imagining, and they want. They want no more or no less. They expect you to give them their heart's desire, And I learned this from a very unlikely person. He was the manager of one of these gated communities, and I was this brash young architect with a lot of cynicism who thought half the people who were building there were building rubbish. And he turned around and told me, Dekho ji, har aadmi jo yahan ghar bandhta hai, wo raja hai. He's building, or she's building her dream house. So I think that's a very humbling thought you must carry with you.
Who has the mic? Uh, can we please pass the mic to, yeah, to Varun? And then we'll come to Neil. Sorry, Neil, so many Neils are there today.
Yeah, hello. I would like to actually extend the question which Hanika asked about regionalism. So when we talk about regionalism and contextual designs, it is, I guess it is not only limited to materials, but also about the context around the site, which is the locally built house by the people around. And when, so have you ever studied a locally built house, like not only the materials, but the spatial configurations they have, because it has been built over years and they have very interesting leisure spaces around them. So, so have you ever tried to study them and then inculcate them in
Maybe
the
we
design?
can, yeah, maybe we can listen to all the questions and then they can respond collectively.
Hi, I'm Neil. So my research was around understanding how images have played a role in shaping the spatial language of the contemporary imaginations of home. And to take that question ahead, I wanted to ask all three of you on what role do images play in conversations with your clients, where clients often now bring their own images or Pinterest boards or reference houses, which also carry aspirations as well as limitations with them. How do you negotiate these images?
Before you go ahead, are you serving dinner?
So how do you negotiate these images, reinterpret them, or even subvert them in order to open up new possibilities in your design was my question. Thanks.
I'll start from Neil. So now, that's something that we battle with all the time. And I think as clients are informed and they are well traveled and they have their ideas and a whole lot to contribute towards, that's something that we've come to live with. Having said that, you have your own imagery. And I think I will lean back on the image that I have in my head more than anything else. And that's something that we battle with in the studio as well. Mind you, I don't want to paint only the client black here. It's people like you and all of you guys also have enough available. So when I ask for some designing to be done, it's done out of referencing and not out of your head. And I constantly fight. There is Shaurya Pawar who's sitting over here, and she would have experienced that for a term, or Dana for that matter. I would say come back with what you guys have thought through and not what you've seen. So if consciously we are going back to our imagination and not seeing what we are seeing, then there is some originality, there is some purity about what's coming through. But clients coming back with these reference images and the stuff, you can't stop. That boat has sailed. We are in the era where you can't go back and say, hey, listen, you know what, you wait for my sketches and that's coming. No. So I can act extremely salty about it, and I do that, and I keep fighting those small little battles so that the war is eventually yours. But live with that, and you guys, well, God save you people. Talking about regionalism and vernacular architecture, I can say that it's difficult to teach clients that, and I'm sure that they agree with us. It's difficult to tell clients, hey, listen, you know what, we are going to design it like the village house in which you bought the land. It will not happen. Do it for yourself, show it. If it sticks, they will buy it. I've done it for myself. Just enlarged it a little bit, but stayed with the vernacular techniques, the materials, the environment, the way they live. Just made it a little more urbanized because we still have a life which is urban contextual. But you cannot have people buy that concept. They can at best experience it and buy, if at all. So keep investing your energy into it and see that someday you're able to try and get more people to be sensualized with that.
We'll close with Rupali's question.
Thank you. That's been a long day, and I just want to end with the title of the panel, which says urban periphery as the site of experimentation, but the periphery is also the core for something else. And there's a whole process of urbanization that's going on in this region, which a lot of people are running from. And also because, I mean, all of you are really kind of thinking long durée practices. I'm just wondering if there is something to do with engaging with that urbanization in the practice that you would think of in the future of making your practices. Because there's a sense of also understanding the site, there's a sense of ecology, but there's also the process of the urban, which is outside this ecology. There's a kind of lived relationship to the land. It's somebody else's core. So I'm just wondering if you see, I mean, this is of course a speculative question, but can you think of really drawing this core, which is the periphery for the practices that we are seeing now, into your practice as portfolios of thinking? I mean, I think this is very important for young students here, because as they build their practices, as they kind of also expand their ways of thinking and making, I think that will be very useful coming from your experience of this sort of long durée engagement with practice. And I just want to maybe one small other sort of side to that was we were doing this study on architectural education, and one of the things is sort of, because we don't have data, but just sort of looking at ArcDaily data and just over 600 projects, you realize that most architects' projects are 60% houses. Yeah, and I was just sharing that in the, I mean, none of your projects here exceed, I think, 10,000, you said, with landscape and other things. But I mean, I was on the jury of the merit list, the TML, right? And there were houses that were 50,000 square feet, 70,000 square feet, 80,000 square feet. And it's really like, and these are in the periphery, So it's really kind of, I mean, where are we going with that? And then there was this one project, which was also then made it to the list, which actually, and then later we met the architect who really fought with the client and really sort of developed this program where part of the house actually became like a public space, and somebody was coming and teaching children there and other things, because that is, what do you do? I mean, that's what his thing was. What do you do with a 50,000 square foot house, right? You can't be sleeping in like 10 rooms at the same time. So this is a long, but I'm just probably something to end this thing also. How do you see engagement with the core in any ways? Is there a possibility even, or is there a way in which one can actually start centering this core?
I don't know if I got your question right, but I think we are in a historical process. We've seen it happen. I don't see why it should be different. And we've seen it happen well also. It's not that it's always gone off. I think the key to this is planning plays a very big role in anticipating where we are headed. And so everything that architects plan. One of the problems that we are facing now in these areas is that the rules have now allowed you to urbanize, FSIs are higher, but the infrastructure in terms of roads, in terms of laws that control the ruination of your natural features, stricter norms about what are going to be urban forests have to be adhered to. So I think the land and the terrain is where I feel we can protect and release lands for urbanization so that we don't make the errors we made earlier. And we can also plan, especially in these areas of the Konkan, green cities, greener cities. If we don't do it, it'll be an opportunity lost. I don't think going high-rise or not is, right now the high-rises look like sore thumbs, but that's not the point. The point is What is the proportion of green space that you're willing to leave? What is the proportion of playgrounds you're going to leave? What is the way the natural streams that come down from the Sahyadris are allowed to flow through your lands freely without, already people have started doing ridiculous fills and flattening their lands. So we are at a stage where we can save it. We can have a beautiful set of green cities which are unique, but we just have to live with that larger vision, and we as architects can build within that vision, whether we are building second homes or as the years go by, whether we are building high rises or institutions, whether we are leaving setbacks because we know there's a road coming there in the future. But it's so beautiful, I think it deserves better. And I think more people deserve to see that beauty. So it doesn't have to be, as the young man there rightly said, the privileged alone. But we can all live in it. And especially the people who belong there and who understand it and really love it can continue to live there, So it's a tragedy if this privilege does not lend itself to that bigger vision. I see the vision all the way from Revas or Mandwa, all the way to Murud and beyond. You can live like that. Why not?
I'll take that point. Just extend your thought. I'll take 1 minute. Talking about big houses and how we can utilize them, how we can draw a balance between the aspiration and a certain sanity, let's just say, about that space. I've always believed, and I'll bring your idealism just a notch lower. Allow me that, please, Rupali. We are architects. We can have ideals, we can have thoughts, we can have dreams. But good architecture needs good patrons. I think what we lack is the patrons of the kind who are just as oriented or as evolved towards the concept of not just use, but share. So if I would have an unbuilt project called Project Awas, it's in Awas again, where you're building not a house of aspiration and 10,000 square feet, the stream going in there, but you also have a museum because the patron happens to be an art connoisseur. And then I build a small little village for artists, where you have 6 or 8 or 10 of these small structures. You can come and use it as residency, or even come in as a village initiative to come in and spend an art day or an art weekend. You need patrons to put that money in there to make that happen. You may have the ideas, but I need that 20 crores to make that happen. And if we have people out there patrons who have that sort of orientation towards such projects, why not, Rupali? But sadly, the reality is a little away from that. I have to say that. I have to bring realism into this room. I will, for once, just pause the idealism that we all live with in our heads and say the reality is that people do see, isme mera kya fayda hai yaar. So hope, I keep living in hope. I don't give up hope. So somebody would someday tell me, if I have the means, I will do something for architecture to become the king, to become the winner. Thank you.
Would you like to respond, or? Okay, I think it's been a long day, and we have got a lot of food for thought today with the material that all the panelists have shown, and also, the stories that they have shared. So we'll try to kind of formalize it into some kind of thing which can become, the space for reflection for all these young architects to become. So thank you so much for joining, all of you, Rohit, Puran, and Vandana. And we'll try to kind of expand this circuit to bring more people into conversation until the next session that we will have here, which is on September 5, which is titled Multinational Dispositions, and it will talk about how the multinational collaborations actually became a way to, after the 90s, as a way of operating in the urban space. So please join us for the next conversation, and it'll be on YouTube also if you can't travel so far. So please do join us and give your feedback. Thank you so much.